Sviatlana, I want to ask you just very frankly, when you heard the news yesterday, what was your initial reaction?
Actually, it wasn't a surprise for me because the death of Prigozhin exactly 2 months after his march on Moscow is a very clear signal from the Kremlin against its domestic enemies. It shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, actually, because Putin's Russia behaves as a thug state where laws don't work, where everyone can be killed, I don't know, poisoned or blown up. And it's plausible that Putin will continue cleansing from any alternative voice, and Russia will become fully a totalitarian state with a cult of Putin.
And can I follow up on this? I think you make it clear with the choice of words and language that you do not believe this was an accident. What you say is that the Kremlin's hand is behind this, and this was a message perhaps to the rest of Russian elites or potential opposition.
Of course, it's not a mistake or accident for sure. It's a direct blow of Prigozhin.
And Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, obviously you have a track record now of opposing Alexander Lukashenko in Belarus. We should know that your husband is in prison and you had to flee the country for your life. I wonder, however, Alexander Lukashenko took a lot of credit for this deal. He said the reason why Prigozhin is here and Wagner has moved to Belarus is because I worked on this deal. It seems there is no deal. Prigozhin is dead. I wonder what kind of information, however, do you have about Wagner and this deal? Do you believe ultimately he was tricked to by Russia?
I think that this case is a strong blow for Lukashenko. I think that he feels very fragile now because he is, in fact, was set up. He feels that he can be eliminated, same as Prigozhin, for example. The deal he reportedly broke didn't work out. So the death of Prigozhin destroys his image of a peacemaker and a deal broker who, saved the Russian people. And his security guarantees were worthless. He was buying time for Putin to plan his revenge, actually.
Can I ask you, as a follow-up to that then, do you believe Alexander Lukashenko has reasons to worry? And we should note again, Vladimir Putin provided support after that election, which the international community was rigged. And one of the reasons why Alexander Lukashenko is still in government is because of that support from Russia. Do you believe that today he walks up as a puppet leader, perhaps?
Yeah, of course, Lukashenko now is on the leash to Putin. He's full accomplice to Putin, and he depends a lot on Putin's economical and political support. But again, this situation with Wagner, with Prigozhin, showed to Lukashenko that he's under threat again, and this situation can bring military forces of Belarus to deconsolidation because they shouldn't be able to feel safe now.
And do you have any information? I know that you have said that you were worried about the implications of Wagner being in Belarus. We also heard from a number of Baltic leaders saying that they worried about that deployment in Belarus. What is the aftermath of this? If you believe that now the head of this group has been essentially assassinated, to quote you, by revenge from the Kremlin, are you worried about what Wagner may or may not do in your country?
I think that this situation possible will weaken or even dismantle Wagner's in Belarus. And this is good news for our people and our neighbors, because we want every mercenary, Wagner mercenary and every Russian soldier to leave our country. And because Lukashenko's role as a deal broker and peacemaker compromised. But again, Wagner groups can be used to provoke some incidents on the borders just to provoke our neighbors. But I think this situation will dismantle Wagner's strength in our country.